So guys, Twitter has been set abuzz because of Wike's appointment as the FCT minister. Honestly, it came as a shock to many people. And you can see that someone is already saying that the president purposely picked him for election reasons. Should there be a rerun? I mean, if the judiciary should say, let there be a rerun, meaning that they are already positioning Wike in the FCT for electoral reasons. So guys, you can hear what Bola got to say here. So guys, Bola tweeted, and in his tweet he said, if you made him FCT minister so he can revoke titles and demolish structures of political opponents, then note that it will be an unnecessary drama that will incur court judgment liabilities on this administration. So guys, you can see that people are already concerned about why Tinubu decided to use Wike for FCT minister. So, you know, everybody is raising concern that this must be for political reasons. So you can see Bola is saying that he possibly wants to use him to go after his opponents. Or like the other tweets is saying that they want to use him to rig elections should there be any rerun in the FCT. So guys, you can see the nation we are into. Many people do not trust our government anymore. You can see that any move that this government takes, you know, people will begin to dig deep into it because they are never transparent. They don't tell the people the truth, so it is very difficult to believe them at any point. So guys, let me allow you look at the ministerial list that has been released by this administration. Just take a look at it.
Journalist by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale. Former Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike is FCT Minister. Wale Edun is Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Dele Alake, Minister of Solid Minerals Development. Dave Umahi, Minister of Works. And Festus Keyamo, Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development. All right, we do have a list, of course, of the rest of the ministers. Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani. Minister of State, Environment, Ecological Management, Ishak Salako. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, just like we said moments ago. Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Bumi Tunji, and Minister of Power, Adedayo Adelabu.
Minister of State, Health and Social Welfare, Tunji Alausa. Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dele Alake. Minister of Tourism, Lola Ade John. Minister of Transportation, that's Adigbe Gaoitola. Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Doris Aneti. Then Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Uche Nnaji. Minister of State, Labour and Employment, Nkuruka Oyejocha. Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy. Minister of Works, David Umahi. Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo.
Right. And Minister of Youth is Abubakar Momo. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu. Minister of State, Gas Resources, that's a new ministry, Ekperikpe Ekpo. Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Henneken Lokobiri. Minister of Sports Development, John Eno. Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Minister of Art, Culture and the Creative Economy, Hanatu Musawa. Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru. Minister of State Defense, Bello Matawale. Minister of State Education, Yusuf T. Sununu. Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed M. Dangiwa.
Minister of State Housing and Urban Development, Abdullah T. Dwazo. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu. Minister of Environment and Ecological Management, Minister of State Federal Capital Territory, the Minister of State Water Resources and Sanitation, Bello M. Goroyo. Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kiar.
Right, and Minister of Education is Tahir Maman. Minister of Interior, Saidu A. Alkali. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf M. Tugar. Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Ali Pate. Minister of Police Affairs, Ibrahim Gaidam. Minister of State Development, U. Megari Ahmadu. Minister of Steel Development, Shoaibu A. Audu. Minister of Information and National Orientation, I'm sure that will come as a surprise to many, Mohammed Idris. Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi. Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon B. Lalong. Minister of State Police Affairs, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim. Minister of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, Zephaniah Gisalo. Right, last two ministries, Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Joseph Utsev. Minister of State, Agriculture, Food Security, Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. And there you go, you have the names of the ministers Nigerians have been waiting for. All 48 or so of them, well, we do know that 45 were actually confirmed, leaving 3 remaining to be confirmed. We have Arise analyst Mahmoud Jega and our Director of News and Politics, Editor Somna Sambo, joining us from our off-site studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We're trying to catch our breath after reading that long list. What a job to do. Let's start with you, Mahmoud Jega. Any surprises with this list? I mean, your impressions first. I mean, we all looked forward to this list coming out today. But a week after the, ministerial nominations and what have you, screening and all of that, confirmation, do you still get that sense of urgency, or is this an anticlimax of sorts? Any surprises still?
Well, it was clearly an intricate balancing act. There are so many things to take into consideration. One of the most important, as much as possible, is to try to align the ministers to portfolios that have to do with their own areas of specialization as much as possible. It's not always possible. And if you ask me, there are so many that had been speculated for long, like the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun. I don't think there was any surprise there. Probably the biggest surprise is that Wike is coming to FCT, which probably is the #1 cabinet portfolio. But the president must have his reasons. And then there are other surprises. For example, even though, Mohammed Idris is also an information professional. In fact, he's the publisher of the Blueprint newspaper. So he also fits nicely into information. But all the expectation was that Dele Alake, who was the president's spokesman and special advisor, was going to be in charge of information. Absolutely. And then there are some ministers who it was a bit of a surprise. For example, the Festus Kiamo is going to aviation because he has, as far as we know, almost no connection with aviation, although he's a lawyer, so he is versatile and could probably fit into any. And there are some ministries that, for example, if you say defense, there is no soldier in the whole cabinet lineup. So what you need is somebody with administrative experience, and that's why maybe he settled for the former governor of Jigawa State. I think this was someone. And then there was the big Ministry of Petroleum, which was not assigned. The indication you get is that probably the president, like the former president, will retain it for himself. But there are 2 ministers of state under it, one in charge of gas, the other in charge of petroleum, Henneken Lokobiri, and the other one in charge of gas. So most probably they will serve directly under the president himself. So on the whole, it was an intricately done balance. Like the Minister of Foreign Affairs is a serving diplomat right now. He is the ambassador to Germany and also very intellectual. So I think he also fits nicely. Now nobody is surprised that Professor Ali Pate was made the Minister of Health. He is a very big international health professional at Harvard and at this Gavi foundation. So it's not of a surprise. And the Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman, is also actually right now a serving Vice Chancellor of Base University here in Abuja. So that also was not a surprise. Not to mention the Attorney General, Lateef Fagbemi, who is a son, a very big lawyer, and in fact the leader of the president's legal team at the Presidential Election Tribunal. So most of the ministers were actually they look like round pegs in round holes.
Okay, let's now get to Sumner from our outside studio. Wale Edo, Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Now that at such a time that economy seems to be taking a nosedive, looks like he already has his job cut out for him. What's expected of such a man in this kind of portfolio?
Well, Wale Edo's portfolio, it's a very big one. You can see that the minister the president, so to say, tried to ensure that the ministerial portfolio is one that actually gives an outlook as to what he, as the president of the country, wants to achieve. And he not just made him the Minister of Finance, but a coordinating Minister of the Economy. Just like former Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was given that portfolio by then President Goodluck Jonathan when she had held the previous finance portfolio, to actually show how important that is and that the focus is actually the economy. But on this list generally, I mean, I didn't find the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, and my question would want to be, has President Bola Tinubu eventually liquidated the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs? What actually happened to that ministry that was brought in place by former late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua to actually appease that part of the country? We've seen that 2 persons from the Niger Delta region from Akwa Ibom and Bayelsa actually being put into the Minister of State's portfolios in both gas and petroleum resources in the ministry that hopefully is going to be manned by President Tinubu himself. They are both from the Niger Delta, so well, it's a sort of relief to people from that part. But I thought that the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs was an establishment that will continue to go along for a long period of time to help cater to the development of the people. The other surprise, like Mahmoud said, is that of the Minister of FCT, Nyesom Wike. And of course, we've seen David Umahi getting a very good portfolio. I think President Tinubu played big on this one. Now, if there's no Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, the best thing is to actually carry someone from that region and give him a portfolio like that of FCT, where Nyesom Wike will be able to bring the sort of development that he brought to Rivers State to the FCT. And this is the very first time that we're having a Southerner in the Fourth Republic to be appointed the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. The only time we've had a Southerner become the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory was in the Second Republic, where we had Ajose Adeogun, the late Ajose Adeogun, as the Minister of FCT when FCT was, of course, brought in place. And since then, it's always been alternating between the Northwest and the Northeast. And this time around, President Tinubu has scored a very big one, and I think it's a well-calculated attempt by President Tinubu to send very clear signals that governance is going to be different under him, and of course other parts of the country will be carried along, because there were talks here and there that if the FCT indigenous people cannot be given the portfolio themselves, why can't someone from the southern part of the country be given the FCT portfolio? And so for a very first time under this Fourth Republic since 1999, we've seen that happening. And David Umahi going to the Ministry of Works, he has sent a very clear signal that the Southeast won't be left behind in the politics of the big ministries. Because in the past, we've previously seen that most ministers from that part of the country, except under Goodluck Jonathan, were previously always given fringe ministries here and there. So very good one there. And of course, there are some people that we just don't understand the game that's ongoing, like Festus Keyabo. I mean, what sort of knowledge would he be bringing into the aerospace ministry, as they call it now, and aviation? And of course, Dele Alake. But of course, these are administrative portfolios, and we expect that they will use their managerial and administrative experience in previous political offices held to help them succeed in their new portfolios.
Malam Jega, what can Nigerians really expect from this cabinet? We were told that this government, this administration, was going to hit the ground running. It's taking this long to come up with a ministerial, a full cabinet. We hear also that they'll actually be sworn in on Monday. That's good to know. But are you concerned that key policy decisions really have been taken by this administration without a cabinet necessarily in place? When you talk about the fuel subsidy removal, for example, the floating of the naira and all of that, you would expect that ministers, a cabinet will actually steer the ship of, these ministries to give breath or oxygen to some of the policies being taken by the administration. Are you concerned about that at all?
Well, you are right that there has been some delays, 2.5 months now since the president was inaugurated, but that's okay. I mean, it's a 4-year tenure. If you remove 2 months, there is still a lot of time left. Now, it is true that some of these policies, if they are discussed in the cabinet and properly coordinated, it makes for better coordination. But it's not late to do that. In any case, I suspect that Mr. Wale Edun, who is now the coordinating minister of the economy, was working behind the scenes on many of these policies. So therefore, all he has to do now as the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy is to formalize them. You still have to bring them into the cabinet for endorsement and also for general information, because if other ministers do not know what is being done or the rationale for doing certain things, and that's when you will have a problem. But overall, apart from the earlier observations that the cabinet is a bit large, but that's okay. And also initially there were speculations that there will be no ministers of state. Instead, everybody will have a full ministry, but that didn't happen. There are quite a number.
Based on that observation made by Festus Keyamo,
who was
exactly Minister of State for Labour.
For Labour before.
Yes.
And he and the former Minister of State for FCT, she also said the same thing as in Dalamatu Tijani. But now there are ministers of state, and I think it's neater this way. Instead of splitting all the ministries, the big ones are all in place, which makes for better coordination. The ministers of state may not be very happy, but I think it's a better administrative arrangement like this. And finally, what might be the decider for quality is when round pegs are put in round holes and square pegs are put in square holes. And except maybe for some few instances, for the most part, I think this has been done with
What are those few instances? I mean, you want to point them out? Which ones would you say are square pegs and round holes, not fitting for the position? Which one out of this list would you say doesn't necessarily fit?
Well, many people might say that Nyesom Wike was very active as governor of Rivers State in delivering projects and all that. But maybe his temperament, you will wonder if it fits into a place like the federal capital. His temperament now, not his qualifications or other things. I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion about that. And then, as you mentioned in the report, there are some ministers who have been sent to areas probably that have nothing to do with their standing, like Dele Alake going to solid minerals, and also like Festus Keyamo going to aviation. But it is not impossible. I mean, Dr. Kawede Fahimi was in solid minerals before. That had nothing to do with his training or anything. But if you are a well-experienced man in politics and you are choosing career, you can always adjust if necessary. Yes.
Okay. Now let's get back to Sumner. Minister of State, Minister of Police Affairs, Ibrahim Gaidam, who used to be the governor of Yobe State at some point. Speak to us about what reforms this can bring to the police service in Nigeria and security in general.
Well, there will be a lot of expectations from that police ministry, and Ibrahim Gaidam having been someone who governed Yobe State, who has seen all the violence that happened while the state was facing the insurgency, while it was at its highest peak in the northeast of the country, understands that policing is very important. He's been a federal lawmaker where these issues are discussed, debated severally at the floor of the Senate, so he should have an idea on how policing needs to be reformed, working with President Tinubu to understand what the president's inner thinking would need to be on the issues of policing. I mean, the issues of police welfare are things that we need to really increase. I mean, most times you go home at night and you still see them collecting, some pittance from people, and you see Nigerians having pity on them. We don't need to have pity on our police. We need to kit them well. We need to properly take care of them. We need to teach them on, law enforcement techniques that are in consonance with, global realities. And then, of course, we shouldn't treat them as people who are servants to people in power. Those who don't have the need to actually have policemen attached to them should free those policemen. We intend to see a situation whereby the new Police Act, which came in force since 2020, needs to be properly, executed in such a way that the Inspector General of Police are allowed to serve out their 4-year term, or when it's renewed, and all of that, in such a way that, we have a police that we're all proud of. And then talking about other cabinet members, you can see that President Tinubu has tried to actually give Professor Ali Pate also a very big portfolio. I think that there are those two coordinating ministerial positions he has brought in place as innovations. He will be in charge of a wider ministry this time around, not just being Minister of Health, but being given supervisory roles in such a way that it will help him to be able to achieve more. It looks like President Tinubu is beginning to say, look, health is going to be my priority, and as such, we'll need new hospitals, mega hospitals. Go to Morocco and you see where the king in 4 years has built a mega university teaching hospital. And we have had instances where people stay in power for 8 years, knowing how critical the healthcare sector is supposed to be, and they don't do that. And then, of course, you have the issues of the Ministry of Special Duties that has been given to Zafania Jesalo. We need to reform the issues of the national honors system that we usually dish out. People who have served this country, military men, civilians, and all of that, should make the list when the national honors is brought in place, and not just politicians. It shouldn't be something that we use to actually compensate people in one way or the other. So that ministry is very important as in terms of intergovernmental affairs, like it used to happen when Professor Jerry Gana was there. Let all the arms of government, from the federal to the state and local government, have a synergy that works better under this portfolio.
Very quickly, Madam Jega, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, many Nigerians were actually of the opinion.
So guys, you have seen that honestly, people like Festus Keyamo, them were even given portfolio. You can imagine Festus Keyamo being given Minister of Aviation, which is a very sensitive position. I mean, this man is somebody we know who is never effective during the Buhari's administration. Now he will be the one to be in the aviation ministry. Oh my God, who did this to Nigerians? Honestly, we expected something better than this. Anyway, we are just waiting for the tribunal to make their pronouncement, because we know that all these things they are putting in place is just temporal. Peter Obi is coming. Peter Obi won this election, and he has proven it. And he has proven it in court. We are just waiting for the final judgment. Let me know what you think in the comment section.